It's August 2nd, 2022. Aaron Brodwin, a healthcare reporter at Axios, publishes a story that runs about 4,000 words. The headline: Olive AI's promised land of automation fell short, customers say. Inside the piece are interviews with executives at hospitals across the United States who had bought software from a company called Olive, a company that, at the 9 months earlier, had been valued by investors at $4 billion. The hospital executives, mostly anonymous, are saying that it's the same but in different words. The AI does not work. The savings did not arrive. The bots that were supposed to run do not run. What we were sold and what we got were not the same thing. 40 months after the story is published, Olive will send a notice to its remaining customers. The company is winding down. Pieces of the business are being sold for scraps. The headquarters in Columbus, Ohio, the largest non-coastal tech employer in the state, will be emptied of nearly 700 more people. By any reasonable accounting, Olive will have raised approximately $852 million across its life. It will have been led by a founder who appeared on magazine covers and conference stages explaining how AI will fix the broken plumbing of Americans' healthcare. It will have, at its peak, employed over 1,300 people. And at the end, what we'll have built the story about is what happens when marketing words and the product roadmap drift 14 months apart. This is the story of the biggest healthcare AI startup in America and how it died when the customers found out what was inside the box. I'm Ian Harris. This is Epic Fail. One dead startup a week. Here we go. I'm going to open up a scotch and then we're going to get into this. So we're going to talk about Olive, AI, healthcare, America. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, so the promise. This is Act 1. Remember, I'm reading from a script that Claude has written me. So, it starts at crosshatch. I have no idea. Cross in 2012 in Columbus, Ohio. The founder is a man called Sean Lane. He is the former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer with a serious face and a polite Midwestern speaking voice. He had previously worked for several years at Data Fusion in the intelligence community. So he's this crossthix in its original form is a patient identification company. The idea was that hospitals waste enormous amounts of money because patient records are siloed and they are duplicated and badly tagged. Cross-checks or sell them a system that ties the records together. By 2017, the company has raised somewhere around $40 million and signed a number of hospital customers. By Lane's own admission later, growing fast enough to be venture scale. I don't really know what that means. Hold on. At $40 million and has signed a number of hospital customers, but it is not fast enough. Basically, it's saying it is not fast enough for scale. In 2018, Lane and his team make a decision that in retrospect is the most consequential one. the company's life needs a rebrand. A rebrand. Of course it does. I mean, the name shit, I really didn't understand it in the first place. Cross checks. But it's spelt CROSSCHX. Whatever. I mean, and then they went to Olive, apparently. The pivot is for patient ID infrastructure to something much larger and more fashionable. AI for healthcare administration. Alright, so I see. They jumped on the bandwagon. Twats. The framing they choose is unusual. They name the product after a person. The market Olive, not as a piece of software, but as an employee, a robotic worker the hospital, who they hire for administration tasks that humans don't want to do. Prior authorization claims, insurance verification, eligibility checks, patient registration, the thousands of small repetitive actions that in an American hospital take up an extraordinary share of the staff's time. So Olive is just a name of a woman that does these repetitive tasks. Real progress there. Okay. Lane begins to use the specific phrase to describe what they are building. He calls it the Internet of Healthcare. He said Olive is an autonomous worker that runs in the background of every American hospital, doing the work no one wants to do, talking to other Olives, learning, getting smarter, returning savings. The pitch is good. It is frankly better than good. It hits at the right moment. It's not a bad idea, as usual. These ideas are normally pretty good. I know in the NHS, the administration is killer. So, yeah, here we go. But in 2018, AI was not what it was. So it's just a buzzword at the time, wasn't it? I didn't even think in 2018 AI had gone anywhere. It's only since 2020. When Olive rebrands, American hospitals are losing roughly $800 billion a year. That is $1 billion of administration overhead. Roughly a third of the total of US healthcare is spent on administration, much of which is non-patient facing. It is forms, it is phone calls, it is faxes. Yes, still using faxes. Anything that meaningfully automated over a small fraction of what it would be, by any measure, a generational business. Capital flows in 2018, around 33 million. 2019, 50 million. 2020, 106 million. In 2021, it's the fastest market exuberance in venture history. It is the year Olive does 2 rounds. February brings 225 million. July brings 400 million. At a 4 billion evaluation. Jesus fucking Christ. 4 billion. And the thing is, this is going to go tits up. And it's only I guess they don't have socialised health care. So it's only maybe the billionaires that actually have to pay this. If this was in the NHS, it would be an absolute waste of taxpayer money, but it's not taxpayer, so it's fine. Okay, here comes the investor list. Who have we got? Tiger Global, General Catalyst, Vista Credit Partners, Drive Capital, Mayo Clinic, Google Ventures, Sequoia, Silver Lake Waterman, and a number of other major healthcare and venture funds. The total raised over the company's life exceeds $850 million. By 2022, Olive employs more than 1,300 people. The Columbus office becomes, by reputation, the largest tech employer in central Ohio, a city that until then had not produced a software unicorn of any size. Lane appears on the cover of Forbes. He is named the Forbes 30 Under 30. The Columbus Business Press treats Olive as a civic event. The state's economic development apparatus celebrates its rise of the Midwest tech giant. In the marketing materials of this period, Olive, the autonomous AI worker, has a personality, a small icon, a voice. She greets you in onboarding videos, like Clippy. I might share my age there. She is described in some materials as having joined the team. She is the corporate fiction and the future of work. In April 2022, 3 months before Axios published the story, Lane gives a keynote at the HIMSS conference, the largest healthcare technology gathering in the world. He stands at this stage. It's always someone standing on a stage, isn't it? I think this is our third stage where someone stood and they've gone, this is the future. Let's try not to listen to people standing on stages from now on, shall we? Okay. He believes in it. The audience do mostly. They believe him. Okay, we're just going to go to an ad. We are now proudly sponsored by Deficit, a app that helps you properly lose weight. I've lost like 2 stone using it, so I would say it's a great app. It's now just had an updated feature for coaching. I would go download the app. It's very cool. It's on iOS and Android. Okay. Act 2. Why it sounded brilliant. I want to do the thing again that I do on this show. This is to make the strongest possible case for the side that lost. Because if only you listen to the failures, you do not learn anything. So here is why in 2021, back in Olive at a $4 billion was not stupid. Point 1, healthcare administration in the US is genuinely structurally almost commercially broken. By 2021, multiple academic studies have pegged American healthcare admin costs to be roughly 25 to 30% of total spend, between $700 and $1,000 billion annually. By comparison, Canada is running a comparable healthcare system on a comparable population health profile, and they spend 15%. They spend about 15%. The gap, 8 to 50 points, is between $300 billion and $700 billion a year, and the American healthcare spends on paperwork and other countries do not. If you could capture even 1% of that, $3 to $7 billion a year, you would have saved the largest software business ever built. 1%. Jesus Christ. It is broken though, isn't it, America and their healthcare system? Christ. Okay, point 2. The dominant approach to healthcare automations through the 2010s had been a category of software called robotic process automation, RPA. Companies like UiPath and Automation Anywhere, RPA at its core is scripted clicking. You define a sequence of clicks and keystrokes. You define a system of clicks and keystrokes that a human would perform on a web application, and the software robot does it instead. Wow. It's not a waste of time, but how How antiquated is that? So you've basically got a script running your job. I mean, we're doing that now with AI, aren't we? Basically. I know someone running their whole job with AI. Insane. But this is just antiquated. Okay, it is useful but not limited. But limited, yeah, of course it is limited. Every change in the underlying system breaks the script, and the script can't. I mean, this is in 2018. They are using a script to just clicks. Wow. By 2018, 2019, when Olive has been rebranded, the prevailing belief is the enterprise software was the AI, meaning machine learning driven, model based automation that could handle novel inputs, was about to replace RPA. Olive marketed itself as AI native replacement for RPA. Smart. Point 3. Hospitals desperately wanted this, not as a technology abstraction, as a survival mechanism. Hospitals' margins in the US are on average between 1% and 3%. A typical regional health system loses money on most of its insured patients, and it makes a margin of a small share. Damn, that's so sad. Administration cost reduction in any administration cost reduction is not optional for these institutions. It is a difference between saying open and closing. Anything that promised even modest savings in the revenue cycle management or prior authorization had been signed off by CFOs with very few alternatives. Okay. Point 4. The investor logic for Olive specifically was attractive. Healthcare technology is famously slow. Long sales cycles, regulated buyers, complex integrations. Most healthcare software companies take a decade to reach the 100 million in annual revenue. Olive, on paper, was growing much faster than that. Reported revenue in 2020 was approximately $50 million. Reported revenue in 2021 was approximately 100 million, a doubling in a category nobody else thought was growing. To investors evaluating that growth rate against an addressable market, 4 billion did not feel crazy, it felt earned. Point 5, and this matters, Sean Lane was by all accounts a serious operator and had built CrossChecks into a real business before pivoting. He was respected in Columbus and Washington healthcare circles. The leadership team Olive assembled included people from Cleveland Clinic, from Microsoft Health and PwC. The board included partners from some of the rigorous venture firms in the country, and it was not a wild speculative bet. It was a structured board of directors blessed wager on a category that at the time looked inevitable. If you were an enterprise SaaS investor in 2021 hearing AI workforce for American healthcare from a serious founder in the right state at the right moment, passing was not a hard call to defend. That is what makes this death of a company so instructive. The crack. So what actually happened? The first crack was the word AI. It was not doing the work that the technology did. The marketing materials in the keynote in the sales call, Olive was an AI worker, autonomous learning, adapting. In practice, that was not what was actually sold to the hospitals. In those years was largely some kind of scripted automation, UiPath sold, RPA wearing an AI brand jacket. When Olive's bots ran into cases that they could not handle, a screen it did not recognize, an insurance company that had changed its portal layout, an exception in the script did not cover it. In most cases, it did not adapt. It escalated to humans. Olive maintained a large operational team, and importantly, they attracted a large offshore operations team to fill in the gaps. All right, so so they've got Indians doing it. That's hilarious. Oh my God, will they ever learn? Do you remember Amazon had their shops with that you didn't have to pay, and they just had cameras watching you, and it turns out they just had offshore instead of actually AI. Hilarious. Okay, this was not by itself unusual. Almost every AI company in this period had many human in the loop component. Yeah. The fraud, if there is fraud, is how much the work is AI versus how much is human. In Olive's case, by multiple accounts gathered by Axios, the ratio was off by enough that the financial model that the hospitals was paying did not work. The second crack was the Axios investigation itself. In August 2021, Aaron Broden's piece dropped. It quoted hospitals executives at multiple institutions saying that Olive had overpromised and underdelivered. The savings projections had not materialized, the uptime was poor, and the bots had failed. The customers didn't always know what was going on. The company was, in one executive's words, selling a vision, not a product. In healthcare, where buyers talk to each other constantly, at conferences, in CIO peer groups, on industry advisory councils, a story like this does not just damage one's sales cycle, it damages every sales cycle. Because the next time an Olive salesperson walks into a hospital, the CFO read the Axios piece, and this at the pier at the hospital across town was also reading the Axios piece. The question was no longer, does it work? The question was, are you confident this time? The third crack was that Olive's executive team had made an unforced error in the public response. Rather than acknowledging the gap and presenting a credible roadmap to close it, the official response from the company emphasized that Olive's products did not deliver value at the Axios piece was misleading. Emphasized that the Olive's products did deliver value and that the Axios piece was misleading. Internal communications, leaked letters contradicted the public posture. Employees, particularly engineers, knew that the product had real limits and watched the company's leadership defend the position they did not fully believe in. Attrition in the engineering organization accelerated. The fourth crack was that the cost structure. Olive was, and at the time of the Axios story, employing roughly 13,000 people. The salaries alone at Columbus and remote rates were costing the company well over $100 million a year. The offshore operation contracts cost tens of millions more. The cloud bills, running thousands of automation processes, thousands of hundreds of hospital integrations, were substantial. To support the cost base, Olive needed revenue growth to continue at the doubling rate of 2020 and 2021. By the second half of 2022, revenue growth had slowed. The fifth crack was the macro environment. That came the same Tiger Global company that funded the $4 billion round in 2021 was, by mid-2022, retreating from the late-stage growth investing at all. So Tiger's getting the fuck out. Tiger's like, oh no, probably can't give you that money now. The market for late-stage venture, especially in the unprofitable healthcare technology, had dried up faster than almost anyone had predicted. Olive's path to the next round that it desperately needed would be required significant down round, which is the company's existing investors did not want to mark. The sixth crack was specifically to healthcare. Hospital CIOs and CFOs do not generally give companies a second chance when their customer dissatisfaction story. The procurement cycles are too long, the regulatory exposure is too high, and there are competitors, including some UiPath and Automation Anywhere, willing to underbid for the same workloads. Olive's pipelines did not just slow, it completely dried. By October 2022, Olive announced its first major layoff, roughly 450 employees. What a bunch of bastards. The company framed it as refocusing on its core products. In February 2023, a second round of layoffs, another 350. In June 2023, a third, roughly 200 more. Each round was framed publicly as a path to profitability. Internally, the conversations were about runaway. At 4, death. In October 2023, 14 months after the Axios piece, Sean Lane sent an email to his remaining employees and customers. He announced the company was winding down. The wind down structure was unusual. Olive did not file for bankruptcy. It did not enter receivership. It executed what's sometimes called wind down sale, selling product lines and customer contracts to two larger healthcare technology firms and using the proceeds to retire its obligations and shut its doors. 2 transactions, both announced in October 2023. Olive's utilization management business, the AI workflow software that helped insurance companies process clinical authorization requests, was sold to a company called Humatal Health. Olive's prior authorization and revenue cycle businesses, which were the largest parts of the company by revenue and by customer count, was sold to Waystar, a publicly traded healthcare payments and revenue cycle company. The purchase price were not publicly disclosed, for multiple reports placed a total cash return to Olive, and throughout it, the creditors and shareholders were well under $100 million combined. Again, 852 million raised. Wow. Roughly 9 out of 10 loss for all investors. The Series H investors, who had funded the $4 billion valuation in 2021, received, by every report, effectively nothing. The remaining roughly 700 Olive employees in Columbus and in the remote zones were laid off across October and November 2023. The headquarters building in Short North neighborhood of Columbus, which had at one point been the symbol of Midwest tech revival, was up on the market. Sean Lane, in his public statement after the wind down, reportedly said 2 things. The first, that the company was genuinely tried to solve a real problem. I think that, to be honest, like this isn't like the other 2 that we've done. This one feels like they were actually trying. I mean, they lied to the public, but you know what big company doesn't lie to the cut? So they just held their hands up. I think they just showed a roadmap of how to get out of the problem. I think everyone would have been okay. And you hang around, ChatGPT comes along, you build ChatGPT into the back, happy days. Then you bin that off and get Claude, obviously. The second was the healthcare complexity had the change in economic environment had been too much. He did not, in any forum that we have been able to find, except the more uncomfortable framing that the AI they had been selling had not actually been AI. Yeah, it doesn't actually sound like AI, but I don't think it was ready back then. Was it? He had since started a new venture, also in healthcare AI. The hospital customers who had built Olive into their administration workflows had on average between 60 and 90 days to migrate to an alternative provider. Jesus Christ. I bet Olive's name was absolute mud. Oh, Jesus. Imagine being that fucker having to transfer all that stuff over to something else in 90 days. Ugh. Many migrated to Waystar. Isn't that the name of Succession? I'm pretty sure that's the name of Succession. The company that bought the Olive product line. Others scrambled to Notable, to Innovator, and Smile.io. Anything with IO on the end isn't going to be good. To the larger RPA vendors. Some hospitals, particularly smaller rural hospitals, reverted to manual administration for months while they evaluated the replacement. $800 billion administration cost. The American healthcare remained, after Olive's wind down, almost entirely unsolved. Okay, at 5, the lesson. What can we learn from this? Sean Lane's version of the lesson is post-wind down interviews is that healthcare is uniquely hard, that timing was wrong, and the macro environment had turned. There is a truth in all of those things, but they are not, I think, is the most important truth. The 4 things that Olive actually teaches. Lesson 1, A is a marketing word. The product is what customer touches. Olive marketed as AI. Olive sold workflow automation. The gap between those two things is where Olive lived for several years and is where Olive died. The lesson is not that you cannot use the word AI in marketing. The lesson is the gap between what you say to the customer and what the customer experience ultimately matters. Customers will forgive you if forgive a lot if the product delivers. They will not forgive you if it does not. Lesson 2, enterprise buyers tell each other everything. In consumer markets, a bad review affects acquisition costs. In enterprise, especially in regulated industries, a single visible customer dissatisfaction event can effectively close your entire pipeline. The Axios piece in 2022 was the event. It did not cause Olive to fail it by itself, but it removed any possibility of a soft landing, because the CFO and the CIO in American healthcare read it within a week. You had the building enterprise software. You had a product on trial. Every customer was not happy. The downside of asymmetric, I don't know what that word is, asymmetric in the worst way. Lesson 3, late stage capital is not durable. It is contradictional. Olive raised a $4 billion valuation in 2025. By August 2022, 13 months later, the entire late-stage venture market for unprofitable growth was reprised. The $4 billion valuation was, in a meaningful sense, a marker of a moment in capital history rather than the intrinsic value. When the moment ended, the valuation could not be defended. Founders who raised at the peak of cycle peak of cycle evaluation should plan for the cycle to end on a faster timeline than is expected. Olive did not. Lesson 4, and this one is I think what operators often miss. A non-existent product is harder to fix than a flawed product. A misrepresented product is harder to fix than either. When Quibi failed, the product existed and the bet was wrong. When Humane failed, the product existed but it was not good enough. When Olive failed, the product existed and was in many respects fine, but it was not what was sold. That is the worst kind of failure to recover from, because the gap is not technical, it is not one of trust. The trust, once exhausted, the enterprise sales was not regenerated at any cost. There is a small detail I want to leave with you. In late 2024, more than a year after Olive's wind down, a small group of former Olive engineers started another company. The new company explicitly markets itself as honest automation for healthcare. It does not use the word AI. It is primarily marketing materials. In any of its marketing materials, the founders, in their public conversation, have said the lesson that they took from Olive was that the lesson that they took from their time at Olive was not that the work cannot be automated. It can. The lesson was that you cannot promise a category that does not exist and survive the moment when customer figures it out. Sean Lane's new healthcare AI company, by contrast, leans into the word AI with even more confidence than Olive did. Jesus Christ. Sean Lane, you're a fucker. He is, as of recording this, building agents, autonomous LLMs-based workers for healthcare workflows. The new pitch is, in essence, the Olive's version that was correct for the technology underneath was not yet ready. Oh my God, here it comes. So guys, I don't read this. I read it as Claude gives it to me. He's done what I said earlier. He's used ChatGPT class models into the loop. Maybe I'm smart. Maybe he is right. Maybe this time that technology has caught up with the market. Yes. But the hospital CFO who lost the time and money to Olive the first time around, this time may ask better questions. They will ask what happens when the model gets the prior authorization wrong. They will ask who is in the loop when the agent fails. They will ask for the first time perhaps exactly what the word autonomous means. This is the death hype cycle gives you. Eventually, not skepticism, exactly, just better questions. I'm Ian Harris. This is Epic Fail.